Hello BookTube. I don't know about you guys, but this month has really just flown by for me. I can't believe we're at the end of May already. But that said, I'm very excited for June and my reading plans for over this summer. As I mentioned back in my March TBR, even before my 5-year self-imposed exile from reading, I never actually read any Brandon Sanderson until I read his e-novella Children of the Nameless in March. I really need to get those wrap-ups uploaded and finished. Since everyone and their mother in the fantasy community swears by him, I figured I'd take a deep look into Brandon Sanderson and his works. As such, from the beginning of June until the end of August, I will be trying to read as much by Brandon Sanderson as I can. When I first came up with this idea, I thought about just trying to read everything he wrote over this 3-month period, but I was worried I'd burn myself out. Still might happen, but I think it's less of a risk this way, and well, there's just other stuff I want to read too, so hopefully this is a good compromise. So, where am I starting in the Sanderson canon? Well, I watched a couple videos on ideal places to start, and promptly decided to ignore them somewhat. The first Sanderson book I will be reading is Skyward. This is his newest novel, just came out last year in 2018, and it's a young adult science fiction. As to why I chose this as my first Brandon book, I've heard good things about it, and I figured as a new series it would be good to try and get in on the ground floor, so to speak. So in this book, from what I gather, humanity has been pushed to the brink by some sort of alien war, and our main character, Spencer's father, has been declared deserter, which she doesn't believe, and she's been trying to become a pilot to reclaim their family honor as well as clear his name when she finds a sentient starship. After that, I will be moving on to Mistborn. So this is probably what people talk about the most when they refer to Brandon Sanderson, as I'm sure most of you are aware, and it is, I believe, the start of his Cosmere shared universe. People talk about getting into Sanderson. They say this is good for people who are fairly entrenched in the science fiction and fantasy genre, which I am. From what I understand, basically this takes place 1,000 years or so after a great war where the villain won and has ruled over the world ever since. One series begins, another ends. This month I'm also hoping to get to The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin. This is the third of all 3 Hugo Award winning entries in the Broken Earth trilogy. I read the first one, the 5th season, back in February. It was the first book I read this year and the first book review I did as a booktuber. So check that out if you haven't already. And for June, the New York Times and PBS have chosen the 5th season as their book club pick of the month. So if you haven't started the series yet, I would recommend it highly, and that seems like a good opportunity to get into it. Maybe not as big on the series as some people, but I would certainly still highly rate it. Another book I'm planning to get through this month is A Brightness Long Ago. This just came out in May, and I am a huge Guy Gavriel Kay fan. I've read pretty much everything he's written, one of my favorite authors, so I was not gonna let this one sit for very long. His blend of history and fantasy is just so good. This one set in a sort of Venice-like setting, which the Renaissance and Italian period is one of my favorite eras in history, so I'm very excited to look into this. I'm not only reading science fiction and fantasy this June, as I will also be trying to take a look at Educated by Tara Westover. Sanderson's apparently not the only Mormon, or maybe ex-Mormon in this case, author that I will be reading this month. This is a memoir about her journey from a fundamentalist Mormon, survivalist cult-ish family in Idaho to getting her PhD. I just recently found out that the fantasy subreddit is doing a monthly read-through of the Dresden File books by Jim Butcher, and for June they're doing the third book, Grave Peril. Now, I read the first 5 or 6 a few years ago, and for the most part enjoyed it, so this will be a reread for me, and I think it's a good jumping in point and refresher. At the very least, I missed last month's book, Fool's Moon, which is widely held to be the worst in the series, and most people, myself included, honestly recommend skipping it to newbies in the series. Some people even say you could skip the first because it hasn't aged that well. I don't know if I'd go that far, but Grave Peril, from what I remember, is definitely where the story and series really get rolling. And the final book I'm hoping to read in June, well, not counting however much further I get along in my Sanderson project, is Red Rising by Pierce Brown, the first in a young adult science fiction trilogy that came out in 2014. This has been referred to as the Hunger Games on Mars. Basically, in the future, human has been stratified into a huge caste system, and it's based on colors, and the reds are the menial labor types, and the main character, Darrow, has to fight and prove himself to the ruling golds and ends up launching a bit of a revolution. Alright, well, that'll do it for my June TBR. Please let me know about your favorite Sanderson books and moments and memories, as well as whatever you may be reading this month. I always like hearing from you guys, and please do consider giving this video a like. And if this is your first Better Read with Saul video, then please do subscribe. Alright, well, I will see you all next time.